We're out here. This is the field where the magic happens.
Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
Oh, it's another episode of Benning Bites. Appreciate all you fine folks out there that are part of what we do. Fantastic show today. Got a little deep. Sometimes we do that from time to time. Just philosophically, it started out with Sam and this morning's discussion. A lot of times when we have those guests that are in those big blocks and we're talking Nebraska or leadership or all these things, you just never know what's going to come out of those. And we've got some talented enough local media that are pretty thought-provoking. And it just spawned this pretty good discussion about just the self-awareness and the ability to lead. We were talking about Troy Vincent Jr. and his comments, who comes from a family with a strong paternal patriarch in the home. Yet, being at the University of Nebraska, how he sees similarities in Coach Rhule and his leadership. I just think it's interesting. You know, sometimes I'll say it like this. I'll say, hey, it's a little easier sometimes to lead folks that haven't been led before. They're a lot more apt to gravitate towards the style or whatever. And in a similar vein, when you hear all these recruits and folks that spend time on campus talking about family and what it feels like to be family, a lot of these guys, and not everybody, don't get me wrong, everybody comes from different household situations, but a lot of guys that they have been targeting are built a certain way emotionally, as best that the staff can tell when it comes to the familia component, whether it's a strong maternal figure, a strong paternal figure. Sometimes it's the grandparents, but a lot of times you're getting that there's this core fundamentally of these are the quality of people that we want to recruit. Not that it looks in a certain package from a structural standpoint. It's just the quality of the people. It's just interesting how they find a way to make it work. And I think it's such a three-prong deal for Nebraska's recruiting. And maybe we can figure out a way, and maybe it's another sit down with Coach Rhule. I don't know. But I just think there's this three-prong approach that they use, and it seems like only one we gravitate towards. What do I always push back on with Ravi during the show? It's like, well, they ran such and such a time, or I'm like, yeah, it's not just that, right? It's deeper than in the numbers. And then we hear support staff talk about, unlocking that and getting guys to play fast and what happens when you can deal with failure and how your mind can process quickly and how those numbers represent what you're capable of, not necessarily what you're doing. Or, the star rankings, like what we see on film. Oh, they look like this, this, and this. And that's only part of it, right? But there's the film thing, and then there's the measurables, and then there's the character. And I think it's the one that we talk about the least, but rightfully so. It's probably the one we know the least about because we're not around those young people being recruited. But I think it is super important to Nebraska because it's 60% of what they talk about. We almost so I'll tell you, we almost never hear about the end game, right? We're going to win X amount of games, or we're going to win this game, so we don't ever talk about the end thing. We talk a lot about the process. We talk a lot about handling adversity. We talk a lot about the willingness to be unselfish. We talk a lot about the ability to receive instruction. We talk a lot about how a lot is required from service hours. So there's that holistic approach to student athletes. But we don't focus enough on, I think, the character component. And I think it's interesting because I think that component, it's what I've said for, I think since Coach Rhule has been here, certainly the last half of Trev's stay here. People give Trev a hard time on a lot of things, but one thing I think that he was really striving for, whether it was diversity in the athletic department, the ability to think differently, to want to provide things that Coach Rhule asked for in terms of what for staff and support staff, was this whole idea to promote family. How Nebraska's greatest equalizer was going to be, we're going to make this such a good place to be with good people and good work ethic that you won't want to go anywhere else. That it's our great offset to guys asking for more money or leveraging the portal. Like, you just, why don't people want to leave Nebraska? And don't tell me it's not because they're not good players, because you heard Coach Rhule push back on that, and he said it 100 times better than I ever could. But he said, when Ohio State brings guys into camp as freshmen and sophomores, and they end up being their top guys that are 4 or 5 star guys, they bring them in early. And we just say, oh, man, there's a 4 or 5 star. He says, when I do that, it's, oh, I'm finding diamonds in the rough. He's like, no, we're pretty good at what we do in the evaluation process. And as you see, a lot of those guys end up getting offers after we do. And I just think it's an understated part of the recruiting plan, because it's not just about the physical attributes. It's, can this young person function in a system like this where, yeah, we like to be old and we like to be experienced, and a lot of our young guys we use to supplement and not supplant. Are you built for that? Can you be a part of something greater than yourself so the sum of our parts can take on the world? That's not for everybody, but you're less apt to be haphazard with your selections if it's intentional. And I think the way that they recruit is intentional. Are you built to share? And sometimes it's not only your talents or your treasure. A lot of times it's your time. And that's the one thing that I think adults are the least willing to part with. Quick to want to, hey, you want to pick my brain? That's fine. Let's Zoom. Call me on the phone. Oh, hey, you need a donation or contribute to GoFundMe or, support this fundraiser? That's fine. But, hey, I don't have a lot of time on my schedule to come spend with you. Yet we want that to be something that our young people are just able to endure. Spending time around other people for a greater good, and they may not see the immediate dividends of it. If we're not modeling that as adults, why is it so undervalued when you see it in young people? Well, the cool thing for the University of Nebraska, at least in their recruiting model so far, it isn't undervalued. It's a prerequisite. It's another episode of Benning Bites.